Hello? I think all of you know my name, but my name is Kareena, for those of you who don't know. I've lived in Kansas City for the last 15 years, which is kind of crazy, and this is kind of my home. So I just wanted to share with you what I've been doing over the last 9 months and how you guys have supported and helped me and really made a difference in Zambia and in me. But we're going to start with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this absolutely beautiful day. Lord, thank you that I can be here with all of these incredible people, these members of my family, of your family. God, I ask that you use my voice tonight to properly share all that they have done, all that you have done, and all that we can do together. We love you, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to start with an active song to get you a little more ready for the presentation. This is a song I learned on Crusade, which is kind of like you go out, you do medical missionary work, lay evangelism, and you build a one-day church. And this was a song in the local language that we learned as the missionaries there. So I'll just start. Do I need to use this mic? Okay. I'll just go like this. So, Lesa alitemwa, aven no no. Lesa alitemwa, aven no no. Twala ikala, twala iminima, twala ikala, twala iminima. Thank you. So, now I want you guys to do it with me. You don't have to try the words, but if you want to, do a little motion. Does that sound like a plan? Understandable. You know, just bend your knees a little bit, however you want to do it. All right. Lesa alitemwa, aven no no. Lesa alitemwa, aven no no. Twala ikala, twala iminima, twala ikala, twala iminima. Beautiful. Have a seat. So that was one of the funnest songs that we got to sing with the kids. But I'll get more into that later. I'm going to greet you in the traditional Tonga dialect. Sorry, there's multiple that I know. Mwabuka buti means good morning, how are you? So try it with me. Mwabuka buti, right? And then the response to that would be kabotu. So that's I'm fine. In Africa, they don't say I'm good, they say I'm fine. And it's very off-putting. Honestly, that was one of the culture shocks, is they say, instead of like, you're like, hi, how are you? And they're like, I'm fine. And you're like, are you okay? Are you sure you're fine? Or you're like, hey, how did this project go? And they're like, it was okay. And you're like, it was okay? What went wrong? And they're like, no, it was okay. And you know, they mean it was good. So getting used to that was very interesting. So I'm going to start from the very beginning, flying over to Africa for the very first time. This is my first overseas trip. You can see me there. I think that's in Dallas-Fort Worth on the second leg of my flight. The first leg of my flight out of Kansas City was delayed by an hour and a half, which was about the time of my layover in Dallas. So as soon as I landed in Dallas, the people next to me were kind enough to let me off first, and I sprinted through the airport. And if you've been to the Dallas airport, you know it's massive, and you have to get on the sky rails, and it's not a very efficient way to get around an airport, it feels like. So I was running, and I made it. I was one of the last few people on the airplane, and I was so grateful. I sat down in the plane next to a lovely couple going to, I think, Kenya for a safari, and yeah, I do recommend you buy Wi-Fi on any flight longer than 7 hours. It makes it a lot easier, and you get to talk to your friends, your parents. It's $10. Do it. That's a picture of us flying over probably somewhere in Greece. When I got to Doha in Qatar in the Middle East, we sat down. I finally found these two people, some of my friends and new family, for the next 9 months. They're both from Southern, so we collaborated on our flights. We landed in Lusaka together. That was the back, that car with the bananas, that was the back of the van when they picked us up. And that was one of the first things I noticed. They love to give bananas. Riverside Farms is a banana farm. So they brought us bananas, and we had our first African banana. One of the first things we did when we got there was go and get SIM cards. Very first world problem, and we had to go into this pretty deep market. So the first introduction to Zambia was an intense market with hundreds of people around, people bartering, people yelling, one kwacha, one kwacha. Kwacha is the currency in Zambia, and so many things all around. And we had just been awake for almost 30 hours. So this was overwhelming. We arrived at Riverside Farms. My roommates took a nap while I decorated because I could not go to sleep. I was so excited. We met the directors, and then we took a tour around the farm. At this point in Zambia, it's very dry. Everything looks dead. It's just depressing. Honestly, when I landed, I was like, what did I get myself into? This land is dry. It's like just dead. It felt dead. But it would turn green 2 months later. October 24th is the first day it rains, and it always rains on October 24th, the day of freedom for Zambia. So one of the things we did when we first got there is go grocery shopping, because in Zambia, you can't order things on Amazon. It's just not, it doesn't happen. You can't order things directly to your house. They go to a P.O. box. You have to pick it up. You might have to pay a bribe in order to get into the P.O. box. It just depends. So we had to go grocery shopping, and we went to this place called ShopRite. And then there's another one called Pick and Pay. Pick and Pay is a smaller one. It's not as nice, but it has everything you need. It has flour, it has sugar. You can find a type of soy sauce. It's not very good. Rice. And so there's also pizza in this mall. So that was one of the first African eating out experiences we had was pizza. And it was not any of our chain pizzas, to be sure, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. On the right is a picture... Yes. On the right is a picture of the market in Kafui. We went to go get shitangi, which is something like what I'm wearing right now. It's a fabric. It comes in about 2 meters. And if you go to the larger market, it comes in 6 meters. And most women wrap it around their waist and wear it as clothes. Pants are just not a thing in Zambia. If you're wearing pants, you're either super trendy or you're a foreigner. So we were recommended to not wear pants, to wear skirts. So as a person who loves pants, I got used to wearing skirts, and now I kind of enjoy them. Meeting the people in Zambia was an incredible experience. There on the right, left. There on the left is my friend Hadassah. She was one of the students in the tailoring school at Riverside. Super smart. She was tutoring the director's kids. She's going to become a lawyer. She's going to Ndola University. And she's a Pathfinder and a fantastic speaker, and it was so much fun getting to know her. The people on the right are some of my roommates and the other SMs that were there. Let's see. On the furthest left is Elizabeth and Scott Frayne. They're from Michigan. Elizabeth goes to Weimar. Scott's going to Andrews. And then on the right is Sarah, and she goes to Southern with me. We were missing one of our members because she had typhoid. Sarah B had typhoid. And yes, there are 2 Sarahs. So I'll refer to them as Sarah B and Sarah H. This up here is Sarah H. So Sarah B had typhoid. She was my roommate, so I was sleeping in the living room for 2 weeks while she had typhoid. And if you don't know what that is, it's a lot of vomiting, fever. It's not fun. I can tell you that from watching someone have it. On the left is the Knowles. So Tuesday nights, we would go to the Knowles house, and we would have dinner and play games. The favorite game is called Thump Thump, which is this kind of guessing game, and it's really fun. If you want to play it sometime, let me know. And on the right is our safari to the Lower Zambezi. In that picture are the Hardings, the SMs, I think some of the dentists, and the Knowles. So that was super fun. We got to do tons of amazing stuff with the expat families, and they're super amazing. So I'm going to take a second to explain Riverside Farms and all of its encompassing mission aspects. Riverside Farms was founded 50 years ago this year, which by, I think, Foster's. And David Livingstone was on Riverside's campus at some point, not when Riverside was a thing, but before Riverside. He slept under a baobab tree at Riverside. We have 60 hectares of banana trees. So those bananas give us the money to do most of our mission work. We do about 30 crusades a year, so going out to different places, doing medical missionary work, evangelism, and then hopefully baptizing people. On the crusade we were on, we baptized 36 people, which is incredible. So that's kind of what Riverside does. It has education programs. It has a primary school and a secondary school. They're working on a college. They're working on getting 6 new wheat fields or soybean fields that will allow them to get a full college and maybe even a hospital in a few years. But Riverside is growing. It's on the up. And it's so cool to see how business, agriculture, is able to impact the mission work, that it's self-reliant, that it doesn't need donations. And that's what I'm working on right now. So I'll talk about Crusade next. So Crusade was supposed to leave on a Sunday. We left on a Wednesday. We were supposed to leave at 3:30. We left at 4:30. And the picture on the right is the last spot we would stop in civilization for the next 3-ish days. So day 1, we drive for 12 hours. We stay the night at a pretty sketchy hotel, but everywhere is a little bit sketchy, so wasn't really sure if it was actually sketchy or if it was nice. I didn't know. It turned out, I think it was sort of nice. The local pastor actually paid for our hotel rooms, which was super cool. And the next morning, we took off at 4 a.m. and hit the road. An hour outside of this town, our radiator exploded. So we're stuck on the side of the road in Africa, and there's 7 people in the back of this Land Cruiser, and we have no way to go anywhere. Our leader, Elder Fortune, is like, all right, guys, I'm going to take the radiator, I'm going to hitchhike it back to town, I'm going to see if someone either can fix it or get a new one, and then I'll come back. Luckily, the pastor that had helped us the night before came and picked him up, took him back, and they re-welded the radiator so that it would work. But we were there on the side of the road for 9 hours. Our plan, when we reached the next city, had been to buy water. So we didn't have any clean water when we got stuck on the road. So Scott and I got out and we asked, where can we buy water? And they said, oh, it's just down a little ways. It ended up being a 5-mile round trip. So we walk all the way up a hill, down a hill, and we turn a corner, and there's this tiny little store, and we're like, do you have water? And they say, no, we have mango juice. So we bought 16 bottles of mango juice, and we brought them back, and I now hate mango juice because that was the only thing we had to drink for 9 hours. We each had 2 bottles of mango juice, and we cherished those. We played with the kids that were there on the side of the road, and when we got into the car to rest, it kind of felt like we were fish in a fishbowl because we're the random white people on the side of a road in Africa where probably no white people have ever stopped before. They've seen them, but not there. So there were kids all around, all of the windows staring in on us. It was a sensory overload, to be sure. I felt very uncomfortable, but you get used to it. By the end of the year, I think I could have handled that a lot better. So if that happens again on this next crusade that I'm going on, I think I'm more prepared. 53 hours later from our start, we finally reach Palungu, where we would take a boat for about an hour and a half to the village we would be serving at. So there on the right is the boat that we're on. It's loaded with supplies, dental supplies, medical supplies, just our everyday life supplies, tents, our suitcases, all of it. We would be there for about 3.5 weeks serving the people. So there on the left, you can see me and Scott doing induction work. So we'd take the BP, and then we would take temperature and write their names. I can't spell their names. I can't spell in general, and it was difficult. The translator had to be there helping us spell and making sure that we got the right names down so that we could do the proper recording. Those people really hadn't seen true medical work before. They hadn't actually seen a doctor that could say, hey, this is what you have, this is what you need to go do. A lot of it's just lifestyle because these people who live on the lake eat mostly fish. So nutrition isn't really great. The dentists are probably the first dentists they've ever seen. People would come from a day's walk away to see the dentist there. So it was incredible to watch. My role as a non-medical missionary was a little hard because I had this checking-in job, and we could do it for about an hour, check in 20 people, and that would almost be too much for the dentist or the doctor to see in a day. And so me and Scott, the agriculture assistant there at Riverside, we kind of were left with, what do we do? How do we serve? Because going to visit the houses, it's like you're treated like the honored guest because you're white. And the focus isn't on, let's talk about Jesus. It's like, why are you here? How can we help you? It was an honor to go to their houses, and they thought it was an honor for us to come, but it wasn't helpful and useful in the mission. So we weren't useful, and it was really hard. 3 weeks of living in a tent, going to the bathroom in a hole in the ground, taking a shower in this little 2x2 tent thing, using a cup as your shower head. What were we there for? Looking back on it now, I was there to take care of the people around me. The dental assistant and the nursing assistant were so busy, they didn't have time to clean the tent. They didn't have time to make ramen because we missed American food. They didn't have time to squeeze lemons to make lemonade to remind us of home. So that was kind of my mission. But next year, I want to take what I've learned from this and do something bigger. I want to have a VBS program in the afternoon for the kids so that those who aren't a part of the medical work can still serve the kids, and the kids have something tangible to remember. Instead of just singing the first song that I introduced to you guys, or their very favorite song was Making Melodies. They loved it. Greg, I know you don't like it. It's okay. But they loved that song. But what does that mean to them? How can they apply it? So that was one of the things that I wanted to change for next year. So every night we would do the children's corner, which I was in charge of. I didn't want to be in charge of it, but it ended up being really good for me because I had something to organize and make sure things were happening. I could plan songs, we planned stories, we did themes, we talked about all the different characters in the Bible, and all of our skits were translated, or stories were translated, so the kids could understand. At night, we would sit with them, but the noise, the speakers were so loud that it just hurt your eardrums. And so after a week or so, we stopped sitting there because we couldn't handle it. It was so loud. Their idea was to be loud enough to draw the people out of their houses because they couldn't not hear the sermon. So we couldn't hear anything by the end of it. We would explore the village with some of the people. That's a picture of me and a bunch of kids. I was making a crown for an Esther skit, and they saw me making the crown with the vines, and they all wanted one. So I made about 20 crowns that night for all of the kids and put leaves in them, and they adored it. It was a lot of fun. They were grimy and gross, but they loved you so passionately that it was hard not to love them back. This was some of the food that we ate during Crusade. That was the oven. So we would take dough. Our leader would make dough. He would make crackers. They liked putting cayenne in the crackers to make us healthy. So we had very spicy crackers. It was very weird, but it worked. We would make gluten and soy chunks, and we would eat it with shima, which is polenta grits, sort of corn mush mix. And it was... You take it and you ball it up and you dip it in your relish, in your cabbage with tomato and onions, or your gluten with tomato and onions, or your soy chunks with tomatoes and onions. That was pretty much all of the flavorings that there were. We did not particularly enjoy the food, and that was our first time getting introduced to that. So this was 2 weeks after we had arrived in Zambia. So we were not ready. In the mornings we would have this. Basically this oatmeal, but it was not oatmeal, and I didn't like it, and most of my friends didn't like it. But once you put brown sugar in it, it's not so bad. So going into it next year, it's going to be really cool to see how I can take what I've learned and help the other SMs thrive in this environment. Sometimes we would have rice, and that was always looked forward to. We had one bottle of sriracha mayo, and that was beloved in our campsite because that was the only flavoring we had. We used that to the very last drop on pretty much everything. And that will definitely be an essential when I go back. On the very last day we were there, we built a church. It's not called One Day Church for a reason. We hauled all of the equipment up. We hauled all of the metal beams, the roofing, the ladders, the scaffolding. We hauled it all up this mountain, and then we built a church. And on the right is kind of what it looks like finished. It takes about $5,000 to put this all together, between paying for people, for the equipment and supplies. But it's a super cool thing that we can go and baptize people and leave them with a physical building that they can worship under and use to further God's ministry. So this shelter provides them with plenty of space, and it's super cool to see them use it. We had the privilege of building this one in Chippewa, and then with my family later during Christmas, we got to build one again. So this one was sponsored by the Frains Church. So if that's something you guys are interested in, having a Chapel Oaks in Africa, I think we could possibly arrange that. On the very last day, again, we got to see the baptisms. I handed out soap, and the girl that had typhoid couldn't come with us, and she baked us cookies and brought them to us. And those were some of the most magical cookies I've ever had. And the last picture is a chicken walking out of the bathroom because I thought it was funny. So once we got back to Riverside, and it was a lot less eventful trip, it was time to start work on what I was there to do, which was Akuna Soap Industry. Akuna Soap Industry is a natural soap company that aims to provide soap to Zambians that is affordable and not synthetic. In Zambia, people make around 3,000 to 4,000 kwacha a month, and a bar of natural soap costs about 150 kwacha. It's just not affordable. So we're able to sell our bars of soap at 30 kwacha and still make like 30% profit, which is really good for the commodity industry. So I came back, and we were entirely out of oil. So the process of making soap is combining oil with a chemical called lye, or sodium hydroxide, and it mixes and it forms soap. You can't make soap without lye, and it's essential. And without oil, you can't make soap. So we were entirely out of oil, and this was a problem caused by lack of leadership over the summer, and then me walking in having absolutely no clue what was happening. So the first 2 months pretty much were a desperate scramble to get someone to supply us with oil. We got oil finally after about a month. It took a long time. And then I misread a text. It's crazy how one misread text can change everything. I misread a text that delayed us by another week in the oil and getting the oil. By the time we got the oil, it had been about a month and a half since we had last produced. And this oil was faulty. On the right, you can see the pile of like scraps, the sandish looking stuff. That's what that oil made. So we couldn't sell that. It would foam, sure, but it's not something that you can stick in a box and say, Akuna Soap, try it, you'll love it. It's just not sellable. So we had to return the oil, and praise the Lord for his goodness, because one of the higher ups in this company was Adventist, and he was really intent on making sure that we got what we needed. So that was a really cool miracle for me, because I was struggling, and the guy that I was working with was like, fine, I'll send you up to the higher person. And he was Adventist, and he knew who Riverside was. And so that was such a huge blessing. We finally got the oil that we needed, and we started making soap. So this is kind of what the process looks like. You pour the soap into our small mixer that makes about 200 bars at one time. You pour the oil, or pour the lye into the oil, and then you pour that mixture into the molds. So it ends up looking like this when all is said and done. We let it harden, we take it out, we cut it, we let it rest for a day, then we stamp it with our mark, and then we let it sit for 2 weeks, and then we package it. So it's about a 2-week process. There on the left is Sienna Harding, one of the girls helping me sell the soap at one of the school events. Akuna is really cool because we have the opportunity to do ministry in so many ways. Our soap starts conversations. When people pick it up and they see Akuna, they're like, why Akuna? Akuna actually means nothing. And so they're like, why are you named nothing? Well, we can say we're nothing but natural. But the reason why we're named Akuna is Akuna Sesi Pala. Nothing is impossible without God. And that starts conversations. We are able to provide a natural, healthier lifestyle alternative to this typical synthetic soaps, which is really cool. And we're able to bring in more money to Zambia through export, which is something we recently figured out. So we started exporting to the States, bringing in the American dollar to Zambia, and using it to further Zambian products and processes. We have the production capacity right now to go from making like 200 bars a day to 64,000 bars a day with the current equipment we have from donors at Southern, from Enactus, and all of these other places. And it's been so cool to see how we can grow, we can make a difference, and we can supply large places in America with soap coming from Africa and raise the level of living for our employees. I'm so excited to see how this affects us next year because we just started shipping 4 weeks ago. Like, this is brand new, and like, we can use this money for other projects on Riverside, starting the college, starting a hospital, working to privatize the clinic, bringing in more supplies, more dentists, more people that can do God's work. And this is through a business, which is so cool. One of the things I did not expect to learn was how to make a mold. So you take silicone, you react it with a certain reactant, and then you pour it into the mold. But the mold has to be good enough in order to make a nice mold, and you can't overreact it, you can't underreact it. And so it took a lot of experimenting, but we finally had a mold that would work for our large cutting machine that could cut about 100 bars at a time. So that would save us almost an hour of time. It could cut it in 10 minutes, and that was all we had to do. It made a better bar of soap with the larger mold because the heat was able to solidify the soap better. So that was a really cool improvement that we made right before in February. So that was super exciting. Akuna had a lot of progress in the later months because it took me about 5 months to figure out what I was doing. To give you some information, I was on a malaria drug, or I was just on something. I don't know what I was doing. But I was honestly depressed for the first 4 to 5 months that I was there. I wasn't happy. I didn't like the people. But after I stopped taking the malaria meds and after my parents left, things turned around. And I was able to figure out what we were doing. Well, my parents were there and they made me happy. We'll see. I don't know. But it was really cool seeing how after I figured things out that I was able to go forward. Sometimes it's a long learning curve, and it's okay. And so walking through the struggles, walking through the pain, walking through the tears, I was finally able to make a breakthrough and make a difference. So the second semester is really when everything happened. I dealt with problems in the first semester. I learned, I made mistakes. In the second semester, I learned and I made mistakes, but we made visible progress, which was super exciting. I'm going to move on to talk about other mission works that we did. Just 5 minutes outside of Riverside is a tiny orphanage with about 20 kids, and they sleep in 10 by 10 rooms on the ground with no mats, no blankets, all together, and a lot of them are disabled, either mentally or physically. And so we were able to bring them food, talk with them, provide some of them sponsorships to go to school. It was super cool to see. On the right was one of the taxi drivers I met. I think taxiing can be a little risky, but when you meet the right people, you stick with them. This guy, he runs a car company. He imports cars and sells them. So it was super cool to see how he used his business to support missions as well. So he was very active in his church. In fact, when he was picking up some of my friends from the airport, he was a little bit late. They were early, but he was a little bit late to their early because he was at church worshiping. And I thought that was so cool. We also had the privilege to build a well, or watch them build a well. A lot of these people have the tools and skills to do things. They just don't have the money to do it. They don't trust each other with money because money disappears. Even in the church, money disappears. The treasurers and stuff, it's just, they're like, oh, 100 kwacha is missing. Oh well, but 100 kwacha can do so much. So we got to watch them build this well. They pulled the pipes out of the ground, and they hammered things, and they spun things, and then one pipe was out. And there's about 12 pipes in this one well, and it took about 7 or 8 hours to do, so not very long. But this made a huge difference for them because they were walking 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers to get fresh water. Like, there's no other way to get water. And so by building this well, they could do it right by their house. And that was incredible. So that was a really cool thing to see. If you're interested in sponsoring a well, talk to me. It's an incredible experience. We'll take lots of pictures like this one. Hopefully, maybe they'll be better quality. But the cows were even excited about this well. When they were pumping the water, all of the cows came over and started drinking from the bottom. Honestly, that was the cutest part of the experience. But the women came over and sang for us. They made us lunch. They were so grateful for this new well that they had. We had the privilege to go to a Zambian wedding while we were there. It happened at Riverside. The reception happened outside of Riverside. But there was lots of choreography, like people walking and doing spinning moves. It was super cool. And one of the weirdest parts of the wedding is the bride is supposed to look sad that she's leaving her parents. So during the wedding and during the ceremony, she looks sad. But you can see her smile every once in a while if you're looking closely. And it was very strange because I was like, does she want to get married? But they explained to me this was a tradition. I really enjoyed the wedding. The food was good. It was super cool to be a part of that. I didn't really know the bride or the groom, but they just invited everyone from Riverside to go. You paid 250 kwacha for the food and for the other expenses, and you got to go celebrate with them. On the right is a picture from the Export Readiness Convention I went to that was hosted by the ZDA, or the Zambian Development Agency. And they talked about what you needed to export. It was not helpful at all. I didn't learn a single thing, but it was really cool getting to network with other Zambians, getting to see them, getting to see what they were doing, how they were making a difference, and what products they sold. And we ended up selling about 50 bars of Akuna soap at this one convention, which was super cool, and ended up covering all of the expenses it cost for us to go to the convention. So it was really amazing. I'm going to move on to talking about Christmas and the families. So in this picture, there's a lot of people represented. There's the Black family, there's the Knowles, there's the Busels, there's the Hansens, there's the Frains, and there's the Hardings, and then other miscellaneous missionaries. And it was one of the funnest Christmases I've ever had. And we played this massive game of White Elephant, where Zambians fought over the American things and Americans fought over the Zambian things. It ended up equalizing, and it was super amazing to get to see my parents interacting with these newfound family, these people that I love and I miss so much. We got to go on a couple of safaris. So the first picture in the middle, that lion, was a lion that we found in Lower Zambezi. We were super close to it because Craig is crazy, my director is crazy, but we drove up next to it on our way out of the park after trying to go finding a leopard. We didn't find it, but we did find this beautiful lion. The other pictures are from Chobe National Park in Botswana with my parents and my grandma and my papa. So that picture is from the church build during Christmas. We made eyeglasses out of felt for the kids. They absolutely loved it. We built a church, and I believe some of you guys sponsored bikes. So bikes were given to the primary and secondary school for the teachers to use to get transported around the campus. Let me tell you, they use them all the time. When I'm driving down the road, it's seldom that I don't see a bike in use, because this is their only way to go somewhere. It takes about 30 minutes to walk from the admin building to the school. So this saves a ton of time. This picture on the left is a picture that really reminded me to slow down. I was going on one of my early morning walks when the sun was still coming up at 5, and the snail was here just chilling, and I was like, God, this is a reminder that I need to slow down. Things in Africa are not like America. Things are slow. Things are consistent, but they're slow. You show up to a wedding when it's supposed to start, it starts 5 hours later. You talk to someone, they're like, yes, I'll get it to you next week. It comes 4 weeks later. You set your deadlines about 4 weeks after you think they're going to happen. And that's something that took me a long time to realize. This also reminded me that I needed to take a break. So the picture on the right is me in South Africa, Cape Town, with a penguin. That was super cool. If you ever get the chance to go to South Africa, to Cape Town, do it. But I took a break. I focused on what did I need to do in order to be successful here? What needed to happen? And so I went by myself. I know, a little scary, but it was so worth it to get to focus on him. So that's what I did. I decided that I needed to go to the Hive convention. Getting to this convention, which really made a difference in Akuna, was hard. People did not want to give me the money. I told the Enactus, hey, listen, I'm going to come represent you for this convention, and I need you to pay for half of my ticket. They said, that's kind of expensive. And I'm like, I'm contributing half, you're contributing half. How can we make this work? And I started asking in January, and we didn't buy the ticket until 2 weeks before the event. So, it happened, praise the Lord, but it took a lot of work, and I'm so thankful I did it. I flew in, I set up everything for this booth. It was super fun getting to meet and talk to all of these different Adventist business owners and entrepreneurs. So Hive was a convention for Adventist entrepreneurs, and it was free, and it was in the Chattanooga area, which is one of the central locations for entrepreneurship in the United States. Hive has been started by, his name is Jesse. He's one of Craig's friends, so we kind of knew him. I kind of pitched my idea for Akuna to the video. They accepted me, and then I was told that I was going to be pitching main stage for the Lion's Den, Shark's Tank, Lion's Den, for that Saturday night. And so, as you can see, Akuna won $5,000 top prize at this Lion's Den competition. And that was incredible. So this was the moment for me where it's like, wait, this is real. I could do this. Because it showed me that there were people out there who said, this is a good idea. Did you know there's the Adventist? The largest importer of raisins is an Adventist in America. That's weird, right? There's also one of the founders of 360 videoing is Adventist. And these people were here at this competition and said that Akuna was good enough to win. And that was that was huge affirmation for me that we could do it in America, that we could export our product and we could make it happen, and that people believed in our mission. And it wasn't just me passionate about it. So I really took this and ran with it. We have $5,000 to use for marketing. I think we got it 4 or 5 weeks ago finally. And this was in March. So we're excited to see how we can use this money to make an impact both in Zambia and here in America, because I believe everyone wants to buy products that have a meaning. And if they can buy everyday products and incorporate missions into their everyday life, I think we could change the world. So that's how I think Akuna is going to make a difference here in America. After Hive, I had about 2 weeks, so we got everything together. We made all of the arrangements, and then we went out to Tanzania. So Riverside Farms has started a project in Tanzania about 25 years ago, and this is a Swahili country, so they speak Swahili. It's a little bit harder to communicate. The culture is more Muslim, and Kibidula is a paper ministry. So they do a lot of different things in Swahili. They're one of the only places that does Swahili translations for the Ellen White pamphlets and the Bible and tons of other stuff. It's super, super cool. But on our way to Kibidula, our group just has tragic fortunes with road trips. We ran into this mess on the left. This picture is 2 trucks tried to go around each other. 1 truck got stuck in the mud. I don't know. But we couldn't pass the road, and this is the only way to Kibidula. And so we called the car behind us. We're like, okay, you can't come this way. You'll get stuck, because we were already stuck. And so they found a way to go around the road on a dirt road that was rather muddy and could only be done by one of the more off-roading cars. So eventually, after 3 hours of waiting, we turned around just to try and get back to see if we could take this other route. And we could. And I was directing us, and we missed our turn, and I was like, guys, we needed to turn back there. And so Alan drove into the muddy field, and we were stuck. We were stuck for about another 3 hours. It was pouring rain. Me and the other SMs were digging the wheels out of the mud. Two of them went to go find help, and eventually we got it unstuck. We had a winch. The winch broke after our first try, and everything just seemed to be going wrong. We moved all of our stuff once we finally got in, so that we didn't get it wet. We ended up sitting on it, but we were all soaked, and we sat in the back of the car for another 6 hours by the time we got to Kibidula. Kibidula is an incredible mission, just like Riverside, and it's using agriculture to sponsor its mission work. They're an international avocado farm, so they ship out truckloads of avocados every year, and it's every couple of weeks, actually. And they have, I don't know how many hectares of avocados, so many, but they're recently planted, so they're still working on maturing. But this is super cool for them because only 5 years ago did they discover that avocados were the crop to make them self-sufficient. So they have this massive pack house. They start packing for outgrowers, so locals who are growing avocados who want to sell them internationally but can't because there's just not enough money to coalesce all of this. But they can bring it to Kibidula, they buy it from them, and then they ship it out. And so it's a super cool process that's both helping Kibidula and helping farmers around them. So this is a really incredible thing that they're doing. I got to sit on their board meeting and their planning meeting for their mission statement and vision statement. I also got to sit on Riverside's board meeting. Both of those experiences were super cool, seeing how self-sufficient ministry is run, where our money goes, how it works, how board meetings work. And it was a really incredible experience. We did get to spend 5 days after the board meetings on Lake Malawi, and it is gorgeous. Lake Malawi is absolutely massive. You can't see the other side. Looks like Hawaii. Weather's beautiful. It rains at 2 o'clock every day, and there's so many mosquitoes as well. I feel like that's very important to mention. But we stayed here for a couple of days. We did some waterfall hikes, and we just got to enjoy each other because we'd be leaving Africa 2 weeks later. These are the SMs with me, my found family or thrown together family, however you want to put it. But yeah, we had a really great time in Tanzania. These are my brothers and sisters. There's the Blacks, the Hardings, and then the other SMs. And these people made a huge difference in my life, and I hope that I made a difference in theirs. I think one of the biggest blessings as a student missionary is the time you get to spend with the expat community. You get to love them, they love you, you make food together, you eat together, you sing together, you do random things together, you go on terrible road trips together, but it's a family. That's what it is. It's one massive family, and there's just nothing like it. So that's honestly one of the most beautiful parts of the mission experience. I think the two biggest people that had an impact on me and I had an impact on them was Isaac and Katie, my two direct employees. Isaac is my production manager and Katie is my sales manager. Katie was one of our first hires when I was there. Our sales manager previously had walked off the job about a month into me being there when I was on crusade. And so we hired Katie. What we didn't know is that we were actually an answer to prayer for her. She had been praying to come and work at Akuna as a more permanent employee. She's about my parents' age, and she didn't really know how to use a computer when we hired her. And as a sales manager, as someone communicating on Facebook, using Facebook to advertise, that was super important. So I got to share with her typing techniques, how to use Facebook, how to use Google Sheets, all of these different things to make her a more impactful employee and a more well-rounded person. She's super amazing, super outgoing, ambitious, and she really loves God, which I think is the most important thing. Isaac was there when I got there, and he is really good at what he does. He is very good at planning out the production. He's really, really good at making soap. Without him, Akuna would be gone. But he's really fun. His wife actually lives an hour away in Lusaka, and so he travels almost every weekend to meet her. And he has student loans. And in Africa, student loans are collected forcefully. They take them out of your paycheck before you even get it. So he is living on 600 kwacha a month, which is insane because the government is taking his money. And so that's a problem, and we're going to try and work on that. But Isaac is a really incredible guy, and he's super dedicated to the Akuna mission. He loves Jesus, and both of these people inspired me with their perseverance and persistence. And Katie was always the first one to say, God has it. And I was like, you're right, God has it. Because sometimes I would get so wrapped up in, we need to solve this problem, that I forgot that he's already solved it. Somewhere up there, he has it. And so she's been a huge blessing, just as much as Isaac. So those were two of my favorite people. And then these are the SMs. Like I said, at first they weren't my favorite people, but by the end of it, I loved them. They were my brothers and sisters. We did everything together. We went shopping together. We ate together. They said we were one of the most cohesive SM groups because we would share food. We would sit down at the dinner table together and we would have family dinner. We would watch movies together. We were really intentional about being together and loving each other. And it was really emotional to say goodbye to them. Luckily for me, ASI is here in Kansas City. Adventist Layman Services and Industries is here in Kansas City this year, international convention. And they're all coming here to attend that, to see Riverside. And my director and his family will be here, and the Knowles are coming, so they all get to come see Kansas City, which is super cool. They get to see my home and the people I love. So, in conclusion, I love Africa a lot. Some of my favorite people are there, and I think that the fire that has been set in me for business missions is like nothing else I've ever experienced. I know that my life has been changed forever, that I will probably never go back to looking at things the same way, that every single thing can be a mission opportunity. Every single step you take in life can impact others and does impact others. And we can be intentional about that. We can make a difference that is meaningful. And I can't wait to see how God uses the rest of my life to make a difference and serve him. I'm going back next year. I feel called, and I'm so excited to go back. There's so many opportunities Akuna has, from exporting to starting export to other countries, working with different Adventists around the world to make soap as a way to sustain themselves. So who knows what we have for the future, but I know God has it. I will take questions now. So if you're curious about anything, can we turn the black mic on for questions?
I was just going to have the dress you have on, did you buy that there?
I actually had someone make it there. So I got to pick out the fabric, and I gave it to them and showed them the design I wanted, and they made it. And it was only like $60, which is the average cost of a dress here anyways. Thank you.
So what was your pitch when you did that?
The competition?
Yeah.
So it could only be 3 minutes. And that was pretty intense. But basically, the pitch was that we're a soap company that's making a difference on Zambians through sanitation and employment. That's kind of our main focus. And so that's just what I talked about, giving them the numbers. I think I won because I had the numbers. There was a couple of people who were like the CEOs, and they could not answer any of the number questions. So they couldn't answer, what's your profit margin? How much is this? What are you making on this? And so my ability to answer those questions and my depth of knowledge of my company really, I think, stood out.
Could you just explain the kwacha exchange?
Okay, so kwacha to dollar, so Zambian currency to the dollar currency is about 15 to 1 or 20 to 1. depending. So that's kind of where it fluctuates. So we can sell a bar of soap basically for $2 to $1.50. A loaf of bread in Zambia is about 15 kwacha, so about $1. A stack of 24 eggs, 32 eggs is about 64 kwacha. And there's lots of different ways that you can look at that. But again, Zambians make about 2,000 to 4,000 kwacha a month.
Just explain how much Isaac is making with all of his loans taken out. If he's only,
Yeah, I did.
If it's 600
Yeah.
but how many dollars a month?
Oh, that's $600 or 600 kwacha to dollars is not very much. It's 300. It's about $30 a month. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just curious. Akuna is a Swahili word that means not possible, right?
Yeah.
So in Zambia, they don't speak Swahili.
Yeah.
Why did you guys use not a local language?
So it is Zambian. It's Losi. So I believe that's related to Swahili. So Losi is our Western dialect, our Western tribe. And so Akuna Sesi Pala is Losi, as I think I've been told. I didn't name the company, so. So we employ about 140 sales agents throughout Zambia. That's one of the other ways that we make an impact. So these sales agents buy soap from us at 14 kwacha, and they sell it at 30 kwacha. So they're able to make extra money or able to support themselves in other ways besides just an everyday job. And most Zambians don't get an everyday job.
When you were talking about building the well, I'm just curious, where does the water come from?
It's in the ground. I don't remember, what are they called? This aquifer. Yeah, an aquifer. So it's about 40 feet down in the ground. There's water. Some of the wells range from, I think it's like 20 feet to 40 feet. It just depends.
It's Isaac,
Isaac is my
yeah,
production.
you said he has tuition and you have all these other employees. Are there other employees in tuition debt too?
So our other employees, so right now we have 2 contracted employees. So that means they sign a contract for a year to work. That's just how Zambia does it. Those are our 2 permanent employees. We have piece workers who are paid based on need. So we're hoping to be able to contract more employees as we get bigger. But our sales agents, that money isn't traceable by the government. So they're not getting paid like benefits or anything like that. It's kind of just a side gig for them. Some of them have gone from like a house with a leaky roof and like flooding. Like the sales agent was like, I woke up and our mattress was like practically floating. And because of Akuna and the extra money we were making, we were able to move out to a house that wasn't flooding. And so that was a really cool story to hear.
Are the other employees though also in debt for student loans?
Most Zambians do have to take out money to do school. There's not really a middle class. It's either you're rich or you're poor. So most poor Zambians need to take out money in order to do school further than secondary school.
There's not very many jobs.
Yeah, so unless you're in the city, there's not jobs that you can go to. Most of it's subsistence farming. So Riverside Farms hires about 250 people. We are the largest employer in our district. So we're able to employ a lot of people and provide extra income for them, and they don't have to do subsistence, but the majority of Zambians do subsistence.
And part of their subsistence is when we would be driving around, people would be walking with these huge bundles of charcoal on their backs. They cut down the trees, burn them, make charcoal, sell it wherever they can. And the director was saying that eventually, there's not going to be any trees unless they have other methods of making money. And I mean, there was just charcoal everywhere, and mangoes, and there was a little fruit that was not that tasty to us. But they just are along the road selling these things, and if you stop, it's not just that one little stand that comes to your car. You get people from all over.
Partially because you're white. But yeah, subsistence farming is pretty much the only way people make money. Zambia is facing challenges with charcoal, burning trees. They're going to run out of trees eventually. We're actually working with Akuna to do an outgrower scheme for our essential oils, like our lavender, eucalyptus, tea tree, stuff like that. So we'll hire Zambians and teach them how to grow herbs and use them to make essential oils. So that's another way that Zambians can make money, is through outgrower schemes. And there's not that many of them right now, but we're working on it.
Were you the only SM who was working on the business end of things?
Yes.
What were the other SMs doing?
So we had one dental assistant, one nurse for the school, one nurse for the clinic, and one agriculture missionary, like student missionary. So he was working with the nursery and learning about that. So I was the only business student missionary. This next year, we've got another business student missionary to help with Akuna, so I'm really excited to see how an actual team can make a difference. Instead of just me doing everything, how can we spread it out? How can we incorporate more things throughout Southern, through here? It just depends, yeah. Any other questions?
Where were the other SMs from?
So two of them from Michigan, one of them from North Carolina, and then one from Tennessee. So, yeah. So one of them was from Weimar, and the other one is going to Andrews. So he was kind of taking a gap year, and the other two are from Southern. So generally speaking, the main ones come from Southern. This year, it doesn't look like it's going to be that way.
Where are your SMs from?
I don't know. I know there's one coming from Columbia, which will be really exciting. But the business missionary that we have as well is coming from Southern. So I've met them before.
You do the hiring too?
Yes, I'm a part of the hiring process.
Screen the people, some, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so if we're going to sign a real contract with someone, we'll do a screening process. It goes through our HR manager, so he oversees the whole farm. People go to him for problems, etc. And so we'll sit down and talk with him. What are our goals for the hiring process? What kind of person do we want? And then we'll go out, we'll advertise for it. Everyone wants to work at Riverside because we pay pretty well, and we're Adventist. So out of 18 million Zambians, 4 million of them are Adventist. So it's a huge Adventist population. Like you go to the airport, you're going through TSA or customs, whatever you want to call it. Definitely not TSA there. But they're like, oh, you're studying at Riverside? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, I'm Adventist. And I'm like, fantastic. So Adventists are absolutely everywhere in Zambia. But there's a lot of people who haven't been reached yet.
Where did you live? What were your living conditions? Did you have a flush toilet?
Yes.
Did you have electricity?
Well, sometimes.
What did you cook with? Did you have a stove and a refrigerator?
Yeah, so
Saw a brick oven in the picture.
yeah, that was not what we had to cook with every day. So we had an electric oven when the power was on. If it rained, the power was probably off. So we lived in a 2-bedroom house. We had a room with a bathroom and a room with a shower. And then we had a small kitchen, living room, and a terrible couch. But it worked. So we moved everything around to make it more comfortable for all of us to sit and eat together. But yeah, we had a working stove. We had plumbing, but it was plumbing with river water, so we couldn't drink any of it. So we had to go to the well to get water to actually drink. Yeah.
Cook for yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much everything. I did bring a lot of macaroni and cheese, but we definitely learned how to make things. I made bagels, orange gluten, like orange chicken, but with gluten. So we learned how to make gluten, soy pieces. There was a Chinese store, so we would buy stuff from there. We had sushi sometimes, but there's always bananas. So when in doubt, bananas. Sometimes. So the fruit seasons are generally short, So mangoes is about 2 months, and avocados is about 2 months. And then sometimes there's lychees, and there's other weirder fruits that come in season in between. So. I did not. So Riverside doesn't have malaria. Like no one's gotten Riverside, on Riverside, no one's gotten malaria in like the last 5 years. So that's, yes, yeah. And they were like, if you don't take your medicine and you get malaria, it's a really easy treatment. Some people do have lasting side effects, but younger people who are healthy generally don't. So that wasn't terrible. All right, I think we're going to adjourn to the activity center. There's a couple of things that you can buy. You can buy soap. Is it sundown? I don't think it's quite sundown yet. 30 minutes? We can talk about it. But there's cookies and water for you guys. But thank you guys for coming out. Let's pray one more time and then, yeah. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for these amazing people. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to serve you in Africa. Lord, thank you that we can be everyday missionaries wherever we are and whatever we're doing. And I ask that you inspire us to pursue you in all that we do. We love you, God. Amen. This is a file of all of the letters you guys sent me. So this made such a huge difference. Not all of the other SMs had a church that sent them a massive amount of letters. And so, yeah, I really, really, really appreciated that. I could get mail, but it's not very reliable. Yeah. Yes.